Part 1. The apex of the void, in a harsh and dangerous corner of the galaxy known as the Scorch Belt, lived a terrifying species called the Drekal. These beings came from a planet named Varnock, a world so deadly that most other civilizations had labeled it completely uninhabitable. The ground was acidic, the atmosphere was toxic, the gravity crushed most machines, and storms raged with winds strong enough to tear steel. On Varnock, life was brutal, and only the strong survived, and the Drekal thrived. They were enormous. Standing over 9 feet tall, with skin like armor and eyes that could see in darkness, their claws could slice through metal, and their immune systems shrugged off poisons that would kill other species instantly. Every Drekal child was trained from birth to hunt, fight, and kill. They grew up battling wild monsters and surviving the planet's fury. Pain was their teacher. Death was familiar. By the time they reached adulthood, a Drekal warrior had already survived more than most soldiers in a lifetime. Because of this, the Drekal proudly called themselves the Deathworlders. To them, it wasn't just a label, it was proof they were the galaxy's toughest, most dangerous life forms. And the galaxy agreed. Even the mighty Galactic Council of Civilized Worlds avoided war with the Drekal. Instead, they paid tribute, offering resources and trade deals just to keep peace. No species wanted to fight them. In every past conflict, the Drekal had crushed their enemies quickly and violently. They burned planets. They toppled empires. No one could match their ferocity. One day, the Drekal warlord, Kravtal, a veteran of 100 wars, sat in a war chamber aboard his flagship. He listened as his advisors spoke about new expansion targets. Then, a trembling ambassador from the Galactic Council mentioned something strange. There is one more planet, Sol 3, local name, Earth. Kravtal narrowed his eyes. Is it? The ambassador hesitated. It's dangerous, labeled a Category 15 death world. The room fell silent. Category 15 was the highest known level of planetary danger. Only Varnock had earned such a rating. Kravtal laughed. Another death world. Perhaps a challenge at last. The ambassador spoke quickly. It's avoided by most explorers. It's too unstable. The weather is wild. Creatures are unpredictable. Humans, they are strange. The word humans was new to the Drekal. No species from Earth had made formal contact with them. Most thought the planet too primitive or too isolated to matter. But Kravtal was curious. He had fought the best and beaten them all. The idea of another death world, one not under Drekal control, was unacceptable. If there are Deathworlders on this Earth, he growled, we shall either tame them or crush them. Ordered a scouting mission. A full battalion of elite Drekal warriors, over 1,000 of their deadliest soldiers, were deployed to Earth. Their mission: test Earth's strength. If the humans were worthy, they would be brought into the Drekal Empire. If not, they would be wiped out. The Drekal ships launched quickly. They traveled in stealth, avoiding detection by Earth's satellites. They descended into the Amazon rainforest, chosen for its thick cover and unknown dangers. Battalion landed. Signals were sent. Then silence. No response came from the Drekal team. Kravtal waited. Hours passed, then days. Finally, a damaged black box drone returned too. Their fleet. It held footage from the surface, and what they saw stunned them. Their warriors were not killed in battle. They were devoured by Earth itself. Giant insects tore into them. Poisonous plants sprayed gas that melted their armor. Swarms of biting creatures blinded them. Deadly microbes infected them in seconds. Even the weather attacked them. Lightning storms, floods, unbearable heat, and bone-chilling cold. All in the same region, but the true horror came at the end of the footage. Small group of human soldiers, dressed in camouflage, emerged from the trees. Outnumbered and lightly armed, they fought with terrifying precision. They used traps, guerrilla tactics, and perfect timing. One by one, the Drekal fell not 2 superior weapons but 2 humans who knew how to use their planet as a weapon. The Final image from the drone showed a human looking into the lens, face painted, eyes calm. He spoke one word, "Leave."
Ow.
Then the screen went black. Kravtal sat frozen, watching the silence stretch on. The Deathworlders had just met someone worse, and Earth had answered. Part 2. Earth's welcome when the Drekhal lost all contact with their battalion on Earth. Warlord Kravtal was puzzled at first. He had sent one of their strongest units, 1,000 elite warriors trained to survive acid rain, bone-crushing gravity. In monster-filled jungles, they had survived the worst Varnak had to offer. Earth, no matter how dangerous, couldn't possibly be worse, or so he thought, to get answers. Kravtal demanded the analysis of the single drone that had returned from the mission. It had recorded everything. When the footage was decrypted and played in the Drekhal war chamber, even Kravtal's top commanders fell silent. The video began with the drop pods crashing into Earth's atmosphere. The battalion had landed deep inside a jungle identified later as part of the Amazon rainforest. At first, everything seemed routine. The Drekhal fanned out, scanning for threats, weapons at the ready. Then the jungle struck back. Strange creatures began to attack almost immediately. Not intelligent ones, just Earth's wildlife. A soldier was dragged into the trees by what looked like a giant spider. Another was bitten by a snake and died frothing at the mouth within minutes. Poisonous. Frogs sat harmlessly on rocks, their bright colors unnoticed by the Drek, how until one brushed against a soldier's bare arm. He screamed as his skin blistered and melted. Plants exhaled clouds of spores that jammed breathing filters. Insects burrowed into armor gaps. Swarms of angry bees attacked with such force that a patrol squad had to retreat into the river where they were attacked by something worse lurking beneath the surface. The Drekhal weren't just fighting life forms, they were fighting the entire ecosystem. And then came the humans, dressed in green and brown camouflage, moving like shadows through the jungle. The first humans appeared in small teams. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't try to negotiate. They struck with terrifying precision. Despite being outnumbered 80-1, humans had the advantage. They understood the terrain. They knew the predators. They knew how to blend in, how to strike from the trees, how to set traps that no Drekhal. A scanner could detect explosives placed under leaves, nets rigged with venom-coated spikes. Silent drones that marked Drekhal units for sniper fire. The footage showed one such sniper, single human soldier, taking out 5 Drekhal in less than 30 seconds. His bullets pierced their weak points with surgical precision. His breathing was calm. His aim was steady. The Drekhal had never seen anything like it. What frightened them most, however, wasn't the weapons. It was the human's eyes. The drone recorded several encounters at close range. The Drekhal, armored and roaring, charged. The humans didn't flinch. They moved like they had done this 100 times before. Their faces showed no fear, no panic, only focus. Cold, practiced, and confident. In one scene, a lone Drekhal warrior tried to flee after his squad was wiped out. A human emerged from the foliage, stepped in front of him, and pointed a small device. The Drekhal froze. Instead of firing, the human spoke. Wrong planet. Then he pressed a button. The device exploded and the feed ended. The final image from the drone was haunting. A single human stood in front of the lens. His face was streaked with mud and paint. Behind him, smoke from a destroyed Drekhal outpost curled into the sky. He stared into the drone, calm and unblinking, and said one word, "Leave." Then the drone was disabled. Back aboard the Drekhal warship, the war chamber remained silent. No one knew what to say. The Drekhal, who had always been the hunters, had become the hunted. Their elite soldiers had been slaughtered not by high technology or alien superweapons, but by a planet and its people who had turned survival into an art form. Warlord. Kravtal clenched his fist. "They are not just survivors," he growled. "They are predators." The room waited for his command. Everyone expected retaliation, and Kravtal gave it. "Prepare the fleet," he said coldly. If these humans wish to act like Deathworlders, then let them face the real ones. Deep down, something stirred within him. Small, unfamiliar feeling he had not experienced in centuries. Doubt. Part 3. Warlord Kravtal. Rage Warlord Kravtal stood in silence at the center of the Drakehall command chamber. His massive figure tense with barely restrained fury. I just watched the black box footage again, the same clip that had sent a chill through the hearts of his top commanders. Single human, staring into the camera after annihilating an elite Drakehall battalion, said one word: leave. It was not a threat. It was a warning. Calm, controlled, and terrifying. 2. Kravtal, it felt like an insult. An insult not just to him but to the very legacy of the Drakehall Dominion. For thousands of years they had been the ones giving ultimatums, ever receiving them. They were the masters of Varnock, the rulers of a dozen Deathworld colonies feared. Across the stars, they were the Deathworlders. But now some unknown species from a quiet blue planet dared to challenge them? No, Kravtal would not let this go unanswered. He slammed his clawed fist into the control console, shattering it. We offered them the honor of submission, he roared. They answered with death. His second in command, General Zurok, tried to speak. Warlord, perhaps we underestimated this species. Their tactics, Kravtal snapped around. Tactics. Jungle tricks and insect swarms. You call that strength? We faced worse during the Varnock trials as hatchlings. Another advisor chimed in. But they wiped out the battalion, Warlord. With limited numbers and primitive weapons, Kravtal's eyes narrowed. Then we send unlimited numbers. And weapons worthy of a real war. The decision was made in seconds. Kravtal would not settle for another scouting mission. He ordered the mobilization of a full invasion fleet, 20 warships, including cruisers, battleships, troop carriers, and the dreaded fangs of Varnock, a Drakehall super-dreadnought that had never been defeated in battle. It alone had raised. For planets and cracked a moon, as the fleet gathered, warnings poured in from the Galactic Council. Messages flashed across subspace. Do not engage Earth. This species is highly unpredictable. Humans are not like others. They adapt rapidly. They evolve under pressure. This may start a conflict we cannot contain. But Kravtal had stopped listening. In his mind, Earth had crossed a line, if they wished to call themselves. Deathworlders, he snarled. Then let them face the ones who earned the name. As the Drakehall fleet jumped into Earth's star system, they expected fear. Perhaps desperate messages. Perhaps silence. What they received was resistance. The moment their ships entered orbit, alarms screamed across the fleet. Systems glitched. Navigation went dark. Earth had anticipated their arrival and already jammed their signals. Then came the strikes. Without warning, orbital kinetic weapons launched from hidden satellites above Earth, massive rods of tungsten, dropped at near relativistic speeds, struck the Drakehall cruisers like thunder from the gods. One was split in two. Another exploded in a chain reaction that vaporized its crew. The pride of the Drakehall Navy, Fangs of Varnock, took a direct hit to its reactor spine. The ship broke apart in a silent flash, its pieces tumbling toward Earth in flames. Then the humans arrived in force. Out from behind the moon came the Ragnarok, a human-built warship designed for planetary defense. Though smaller than the Drakehall dreadnoughts, it moved like a predator, fast, silent, precise. Its weapons weren't flashy, they were surgical. Railguns shredded Drakehall armor. Smart missiles dodged countermeasures. EMP pulses rendered Drakehall targeting useless. The humans were not trying to win a fair fight. They were showing the Drakehall what real Deathworlders could do. The Drakehall fleet panicked. Discipline broke down. Ships fled. Some crashed into each other. Others were shot down. As they tried to escape, in just under an hour, more than half of the invasion fleet was gone. And then came the final blow. The humans broadcast a single message, one that echoed across every Drakehall ship still functioning. A voice, cold and clear, speaking in a dozen galactic languages. You wanted Deathworlders. Now you have us. It wasn't a boast. It wasn't a threat. It was a fact. From the shattered remains of his escape pod, Kravital watched the earth grow smaller behind him. For the first time in his long and violent life, he felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Part 4. The battlefield Earth. The few Drekhal ships that survived. Earth's orbital defenses crashed down to the planet's surface in a desperate attempt to regroup. Their mission had changed. This was no longer an invasion. It had become a fight for survival, but Earth had no intention of making that easy. The Drekhal troops landed in scattered zones, some in deserts, others in forests, mountain ranges, and urban ruins. As soon as they touched down, the planet itself became an enemy. Earth was not passive. It was alive, wild, and aggressive. And it fought alongside its human defenders. In the deserts, temperatures soared during the day and froze at night. Drekhal's internal cooling systems failed in the heat. Some collapsed from dehydration. Others were buried in sandstorms that came with no warning. In the jungles, their armor was corroded by acidic plants. Carnivorous fungi spread across their camps at night, dissolving food supplies and eating into boots and skin. A single misstep led to injury. A single injury led to death. Even in the cold mountain regions, the high-altitude oxygen levels and constant blizzards took a toll. Frostbite and equipment failure thinned their numbers. Avalanche drones, human machines designed to trigger controlled snow collapses, buried entire squads alive. But the most terrifying thing wasn't the climate or the creatures. It was the humans. They were everywhere. Nowhere. The Drekhal tried to regroup, tried to fight using traditional battle tactics, front lines, formations, and patrols. But humans didn't follow those rules. They didn't march in neat rows. They stalked from the shadows. They struck at night. They used traps, misdirection, and psychological warfare. A single human operative could wipe out an entire Drekhal camp by cutting power, sabotaging supplies, and setting traps. Drones disguised as birds flew over them and dropped chemical markers that guided missile strikes within seconds. Their communications were hacked, maps were altered. Enemy troops were led into ambushes again and again. And just when the Drekhal thought they'd found shelter, the humans hit them with weather manipulation. Yes, humans controlled their environment, tactical weather systems. Flooded lowland areas where Drekhal soldiers had set up bases. Controlled lightning storms were triggered in dry zones, causing massive wildfires that forced the aliens into exposed terrain. In urban areas, sound bombs and smoke walls created confusion. Heat mirages were projected using directed microwaves. To the Drekhal, it felt like Earth itself was reshaping to destroy them, one by one. Their units were hunted down, and then came the legends. Stories began to spread through. Drekhal ranks about a human they called Ghost. No one knew his real name, only that he moved completely unseen, left no trace, and had killed over 50 Drekhal soldiers with nothing but a knife, a bow, and a homemade minefield. They spoke of a woman called Thunderbird, who dropped from helicopters like a storm and carried an EMP launcher that could fry an entire Drekhal. Squad Cybernetic. The worst tale was of a human team called the Black Sunza unit that had infiltrated a Drekhal base disguised in looted armor, poisoned their water supply, and left without a single sound. The Drekhal weren't just being defeated. They were being humiliated. Every strength they had was being used against them. Their size made them easier to spot. Their traditional tactics made them predictable. Their pride blinded them. And finally, after 2 weeks of chaos, the last surviving Drekhal officer warlord Kravital himself was found. He had been hiding in a collapsed mine in New Mexico, injured alone and exhausted. He had lost his armor, his weapons, and most of his pride. Was bleeding from wounds that refused to heal. His body was broken. He was found by a human operative, the very same Ghost whispered about in so many fearful stories. He didn't attack. He didn't taunt. He simply stood there in the dark, rifle lowered, eyes hard. "You called yourself Deathworlders," he said. "Cute, but Earth didn't call itself that. We just survived everything thrown at us. We earned it. And Kravtal, too weak to speak, bowed his head. The mighty warlord of the Drekhal Dominion had been broken, not by a bigger army, not by stronger weapons, but by a world and a people who had turned survival into instinct and war into art. Part 5. The new title, The War Was Over. Of the 20 warships that made up the Drekhal fleet, only 2 limp vessels returned to their territory, damaged, leaderless, and haunted. Thousands of soldiers were gone, their dreadnought, the Fangs. Avarnok was nothing more than a smoldering ring of metal in Earth's orbit. Their warlord Kravel had been captured alive. Never in Drekhal history had they suffered such defeat, not just in numbers, but in spirit. They had believed themselves unstoppable. They believed they were the ultimate survivors. Earth this blue, green world full of forests and storms had crushed their pride with brutal efficiency. And now, the galaxy watched the Galactic Council, a vast assembly of representatives from hundreds of spacefaring species, held an emergency tribunal. Representatives gathered from every corner of known space. Everyone had one question. What would Earth do now? Would they retaliate against the Drekhal? Would they expand into an empire? Would they demand tribute? But Earth didn't rush to speak. There were no parades, no grand speeches. They simply sent one representative ambassador, Yara Lina Calm, sharbed woman with a voice like ice and steel. She stood before the council in a simple black uniform. No bodyguards, no weapons. Just presence and silence. All eyes turned to her. Even the Drekhal delegation, visibly shaken and short in number, sat still. Their mighty warlord Kravtal stood behind them, restrained but unchained. His head was lowered. The once proud leader didn't speak. After a long pause, Yara finally broke the silence. We didn't start this war. Her voice echoed through the vast chamber. We didn't provoke. We didn't threaten. Didn't even know the Drekhal existed until they came for us. And when they did, we responded the only way we know how we survived.
Out.
She glanced at Kravtal. They call themselves Deathworlders. They wear it like a crown. Yara walked to the center of the chamber and tapped on a small device. A holographic display lit up behind her. It showed a lista, long one of extinct empires. Each name shimmered in red. Each had once declared war on Earth, either by invasion, sabotage, or arrogance. At the bottom of the list, a new name appeared. Drekhal Dominion neutralized. The council chamber grew quiet again. No one dared speak. Everyone was waiting, to see if Earth would boast. Demand, conquer. But instead, Yara turned off the display and folded her hands. We're not interested in titles. We never needed them. While others named themselves Deathworlders, we were simply busy surviving things that should have wiped us out. Volcanoes, plagues, world wars, ice ages. Our planet has been trying to kill us since the beginning. She looked at the delegates from the council. And we've been winning. One representative, a tall, bird-like species, nervously raised a claw. What do you call yourselves then, if not Deathworlders? Yara tilted her head. Then she said, calmly, humans. We don't need to roar. We don't need to threaten. If you come in peace, we will share our knowledge, our art, our compassion. But if you come for us with war, we will end you. Not because we want to, but because we must. She nodded toward the Drekhal. They wanted to test us. Now they know. The room stayed frozen, and then, slowly, the other council members began to nod. First one, then another. The entire chamber recognized the message not of dominance, but of warning. A quiet promise Earth was not to be underestimated. When the tribunal ended, Kravtal was returned to his people. He would live but not as a warlord. His empire had collapsed. Its legend was over. In Drekhal culture, he was now a symbol not of power, but of what happens when pride blinds strength. As for Earth, they returned to their home. They didn't demand planets or wealth. They simply reopened communication lines. And from that day on, No species ever again claimed the title Deathworlder with arrogance. Because now, every galactic map showed a new marker next to Sol 3. Earth, approach with respect. And below it, in ancient galactic script, they don't call themselves Deathworlders, but they are the reason the rest of us do.